Cosplay Stitch and Seam. I'm Pannon.
And I'm David.
Something is missing.
Well, yeah, that was way too short. We're like not even 10 seconds in.
Well, dang. Yeah, our lovely V-Fire is out of commission this week. She's actually like on the road traveling right now, but she will be back with her usual spirited self on our next recording.
Can't wait to have her back. She is missed.
Excited. Yeah. If you want to tell her how much you've missed her, you can do that a couple of ways. First is our email, which is cosplaystitchandseam@gmail.com, or the website, cosplaystitchandseam.com, which has a little form you can fill out, or
go to the Facebook page. While you're on the Facebook page, join our fantastic community. They want to see what you're working on. We want to see what you're working on. Everybody wants to see what you're working on, so share it right there. And if you're not a fan of Facebook, we do have a Discord. If you're not wanting to talk about the things that you're working on, maybe you want a distraction, there is a whole food channel, and like there's been some gourmet dishes posted in there. Legit made me hungry when I was looking at it earlier today. So come join our Cosplay Stitch Discord server. You can find it on the website. And while you're on the internet, if you want to help out the show, that would mean a whole lot to us. You could share the podcast with a friend. You can leave us a review on Spotify or on Apple iTunes, I think is what it's still called.
Apple iTunes.
Apple iTunes. Apple Podcast app. I don't know. I'm not cool and hip with the iPhone crowd. And of course, we do have a Patreon, patreon.com/cosplay stitch. For $3 a month, you get a shout out on the show every single month. And for $5 a month, you can join our
Cosplay Chronicles.
I just love that. That was so fun.
Again, yeah, like it's so funny. I make all these masterpieces like this podcast with you guys and The Last Voice, and I think the best things that I've ever made are these dumb little sound bits that I've created for the show.
They will go down in history.
I sure hope so. We play a D&D game that's cosplay oriented, and the world is going to fall apart unless they cosplay for their lives. So make sure you join our Patreon for those exact and fantastic sessions.
Yay! Well, how are you doing, David?
I am doing so stinking good. Our Discord server has been really popping off, and I wanted to talk about something that Oz Costumes, our past guests, mentioned. They said, I thought of potential topic idea. What about convention culture history? Like, what the culture was like and how we have progressed as a community and in the convention scene. For example, the infamous phenomenons of glomping and the Yaoi paddle. If you know, you know.
The Yaoi paddle. Yeah.
I feel like compared to 2009 at my very first convention compared to now, the whole structure and vibes of cons have changed a lot. Not in a bad way, of course. It's just different. And some newer folks might be interested in what it was like back then. I think this is a great idea. And I jumped on this because I didn't do a lot of cons. My whole vibe was I don't go out in public, and I also didn't have money to go to cons, so
oh my gosh,
I am also very curious.
So I've been going to cons since about 2001, if that gives you any idea. So I've seen a lot of the evolution of conventions and like all the different things that pop off and go on and whatnot. So I was excited about this idea, so thank you, Oz, for suggesting that one. I guess like the first thing I wanted to talk about with conventions that used to be a big deal and it really isn't anymore is viewing rooms. So back in the day, in the early 2000s, one of like the best things to go to a con for was the viewing rooms, because you would see like really new and upcoming anime or TV, like shows, things you just wouldn't see anywhere else. And like you would get like announcements for new series, like DVD box sets and things like that.
Okay.
Yeah, and like it would be some people's first and only like chances to, I don't know, to get into these. Where these days you can just stream from like all kinds of websites, whatever you want, whenever you want, right?
So was this like a partnership that you had with like, some distribution studio that's like, hey, you've got a con, here's a couple promo discs of the first 2 episodes of this new show called Evangelion. Try
Or
it out, see what you
Trigun,
like.
or
Or
yeah.
Trigun or Cowboy Bebop. Yeah, just like
Oh my
these
gosh.
late 90s, early 2000 shows. Is that right?
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Yeah. No, like the first like anime viewing rooms, if we're being specific, I saw at a local sci-fi convention, and I
Mhm.
had only seen what was on TV, so like Pokemon and Sailor Moon. And they had stuff like Ronnie Kenshin, Oh My
Oof.
Goddess, all those 90s titles, Evangelion, of course.
Uh-huh.
And I was just like, I've never seen these before. What is this?
Yeah.
Where do I find it? And a lot of it would be sent by companies. Like at the time, I think it was Bandai, ADV, Funimation came along a bit later. But yeah, all of these companies that were debuting their new series.
Uh-huh.
And it was much harder to just like go online and find it because like your connection speed, you would have to download like episodes of Inuyasha in 3 parts on like QuickTime files, tell you how
That
old it is.
that is definitely how I watched a lot of my Naruto when it was first coming out. Of
Yes.
Naruto on YouTube,
Oh my
episode 12,
gosh.
part 3 of 8.
Yeah, yeah. And so a lot of it, you started out by seeing it debut at a convention from the company itself, or that was also when we kind of had the rise of fan subbing. So you do see like so much more fan subbing these days, where fans will get a hold of some new anime or series coming out and they'll subtitle it themselves. But even more so, there's like simulcast now, or like you will have within like 24 to 48 hours of when an episode debuts in Japan or wherever it is coming from, and they'll have an episode subtitled ready to go that quickly,
Wow. Yeah.
I know. It's crazy. Whereas like back in the day, we would have to like find places that would torrent them and download them online. I used to, like, for my local anime club, I was on some websites where you could like find whatever the latest things were coming out every season, and I would download like the first 1 or 2 episodes of all these brand new fan subbed series and I would record it from my computer onto VHS tapes that I would then take to the anime club and play a couple episodes so we could see like the new cool stuff. But there was a lot that, which is all just to say, like, conventions were a lot more about like sharing brand new media back in the early days, because there just wasn't access to it as much. And so it's really wild how much that aspect of it has changed. I don't know, like that was the first one that like came to mind, that I'm like, we barely even have viewing rooms and things like that anymore unless a like company really wants to do a showing. I feel
It
like
sounds like it'd be like really hard to gatekeep, because like in the sense of just like, no, I need more. I know 2 people on the face of this planet who have seen the show, and I need everyone to know about it. Like, and
so
like
yeah, honestly, like one of the only fan subbers that existed way back in the day online was a place called VKLL. And like you would send them blank VHS tapes and they would send back like recorded anime series on them.
Oh my
And
gosh.
you'd pay like a really minimal just for like their time, but like they wanted to just share all these different series with people. And that was how I got like my first subtitled Sailor Moon. Like I still have all the movies from way back in the day. So obviously like that's not really something that people do so much anymore there, because most of the people are like enjoying all these new things at home and then coming and like celebrating those fandoms at convention. So I think that's one of the big culture shifts, I think, for me. What about you?
I definitely like really appreciate the viewing room. Like that's where I saw Vinland Saga, and Vinland Saga
Oh,
became
yeah.
kind of part of my identity for a while.
Yeah.
I'm rewatching it now that season 2 is done, so I'm gonna like
Uh-huh.
get back into that. And I've heard like season 2 takes a dramatic shift, and I'm like, everyone's like, yeah, it's really
Ooh.
quiet in comparison to season 1. Like it's farm life, and it's like, oh, I can't freaking wait for farm life. This is gonna be I'm so pumped for farm life. And there was
Freaking love
one.
my cozy home farm things.
There's somebody listening to Vinland, like who knows Vinland Saga season 2. It's like David and Pannon. No, it's not like that at all.
I'm sure. Yeah.
But like I love the viewing room like environment. Because I know that there's been I don't want to say a resurgence, but like a push for more inclusive spaces and like quiet rooms and places where you can like try and work on your being overwhelmed mind and just kind of be
definitely.
quiet. And for me, that is the viewing room. Like I can watch a show and I can be entertained and I can check something out. I remember we were at SakuraCon when we went, you, me, and Livy.
Uh-huh.
And I don't remember the name of the show, but it had that 1980s animation style, and it was very mechanically looking, I wouldn't say steampunk, maybe more diesel punk.
Uh-huh.
And they were like on Saturn or something. I got like the last 10 minutes of it, and I was like, this is my jam. I love this. I love viewing rooms. That's my like, oh, I'm gonna come here a little overwhelmed and I'm gonna watch something weird. Oh, that looks dumb. I love this. Let's get into it.
Yeah, no, I think that's awesome. I feel like too, one of the shifts I kind of like noticed in real time as I started going to more and more conventions, was there was like this rise of like a more gender balanced in terms of attendance convention. Because I know like in the earlier days, it felt a little less balanced, and like as more companies started to go like, oh, like femme presenting people are like also into this, gender non-conforming people are also into this, there was like more content that is like geared toward a variety of fans instead of just catering to like a few, right?
Yeah
Which I think also was helped by how big of a boom there was in cosplay. Like, I want to say like the mid 2000, like the aughties or whatever you call them, the like 05 and onward.
I've never heard them called aughties before. I've always heard aughts.
Oh, okay.
I'm blown away by this. I love it. I'm blown away.
I'm probably ancient in calling it that, but I lived them, so.
Yeah, as if I didn't. Okay, go on.
No, yeah, you child and young person,
whippersnapper.
Whippersnapper. But yeah, there was a kind of like a cosplay boom as you saw magazines like An America that would feature cosplayers. That was kind of like how I got interested in the first place. You had websites like cosplay.com that like had a forum that just exploded and popped off, and people started getting like more and more excited about cosplay, and you had more access to like reference images and all kinds of different things. Like when I was first going to conventions, one of the only places you could get like character references was if you went to a convention and bought the art book for the series it came from to get like the full turnaround for different characters, you know? And so I have a lot of like early 90s 2000s anime that I was like, oh, I gotta get the art book for that so I can cosplay it.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And nowadays you can just like Google it, or you know, whatever search engine you use, and yeah, or there's sites that exist just to have an image database or archive of different references,
or a whole channel on someone's Discord that's just references.
Yeah, who does that?
Right.
But yeah, I think that's also where we saw a rise in like things like the yaoi and yuri fandoms.
Do we want to talk about what yaoi and yuri is, or do we want to stay more like?
Well, I think both yaoi and yuri have an unearned bad reputation. Well, maybe not unearned, but they have a bad connotation to them.
Okay.
More often today, you hear terms like BL or GL or like MLM, WLW kind of to indicate like a
not hetero romance.
A not hetero romance. That's a great way to say it.
Thank you.
And like I feel like yes, there are there's a connotation that like yaoi yuri can be fetishizing, which is kind of where a lot of the bad comes from. And I am not going to say that that isn't true to a degree, but I think having more access to like LGBT content was also a huge awakening for people going to conventions.
Oh,
like
100%.
Like, I don't know, like some of the earliest like anime I remember watching and like having my own awakenings was like back in the day that I watched Revolutionary Girl Utena, which is, you know, you have the Rose Bride and her prince who is also another girl, and I just remember like watching that and going like, you can do that? Because like my young brain was like, I didn't know you could do that. They're so pretty, you know. and just having my mind blown by realizing that, and which sounds absurd in a day like today, but like I think it really was a huge awakening for a lot of people and inspired more content like, was it like Rebecca Sugar? Is that the right name? With like the Steven Universe and all of those characters were very much inspired by shows, but like Sailor Moon, like Utena, and kind of bringing that same joy and like beautiful relationships and things like that to a younger generation, which I just think is really cool. I also think like this is just like I could go off on a whole other episode about this topic. But yeah, it felt like a very new thing in that day. It was before a lot of legislation had even been passed where things like that were even legal, which is like hard to imagine for folks nowadays, you know?
Yeah. And not to get like too on the political side of things, but is like the legislation obviously took way too long for here, but if we're getting those yaoi and yuri stories, these, you know, GL and BL stories in Japan, what, like, do you know what the climate was in that time for Japan?
I mean, I don't want to like step outside of like my own cultural experiences too much.
Fair.
I can only really speak on like things that I've read about, so I don't know that I'm speaking them with absolute truth, but I think relationships like that, especially back in the day, were considered taboo. And like people getting to explore those through a different medium, like definitely back in the day there were like very problematic stories about different gendered relationships, same gendered relationships, but
a lot of bury your gaze tropes.
Yeah, but they were still being told, and the more they were told, the more other people were like, oh well, I can tell my own story. I can tell a story that has things that I want. I can tell a story that, you know, doesn't end up burying my gaze, you know, all kinds of just exploration into that area. And I think just the fact that it was out there and existing more and more and more really started to change minds. And especially seeing like not just that it was out there, but how popular it was. Like people wanted this content. They wanted these love stories, you know, whether it was like an adult love story or just like a cute high school romance story. Like people were so excited for these stories. So yeah, I thought that was really cool.
So we talked about yaoi, and in the thing it mentioned yaoi paddles.
Do you want me to talk about yaoi paddles?
You don't have to go too in depth. I'm going to reference, and I'll throw this in the description on the podcast, but there's a YouTuber named Red Bard, and they did a 23-minute deep dive.
I have watched that. Yeah.
I love Red Bard. I love everything that they do.
It was good.
But it is the rise and the rise and fall of the yaoi paddle. And I remember I watched it when it came out like 3 years ago, and I was like, This is wild. So yeah, if you could touch on the yaoi paddle just a little bit.
um, yeah, so when there was the rise in things like yaoi and yuri, you also saw a rise in, gosh, I'm trying to like get there as quick as I can without like skipping out too much.
Yeah.
But you also had the rise of stuff called doujinshi, which you may or may not know what that is. They're fan comics.
Okay.
I think they tend to have a smutty connotation or an 18 plus connotation to them, but that's not always the case. Doujinshi is just fan made comics.
When back to Sakura-con, sorry to interrupt your flow.
Yeah.
But like I was like, I'm here. I'll buy some doujinshi, and I bought some Yu Yu Hakusho doujinshi, and I was legit expecting like this is probably gonna be like smut, and like, but I was like, I wanna figure out what this is, and they're so wholesome and cute.
Aww.
And I'm like, I have no idea what anything that they're saying.
Yeah.
But like the whole the visual story that I'm getting is like, oh, this is so cute. Hiei just wants to hang out with this person and cuddle, and this is so cute. Yeah, sorry, but yes, continue. Doujinshi is not necessarily dirty or
So
lewd.
exactly. So doujinshi started to be more and more of a phenomenon that you would see at conventions, and it sold really well. I mean, you had huge conventions in Japan that were specifically just to trade and sell doujinshi. Like,
Wow.
These are like hundreds of thousands of people coming just to trade and sell doujinshi.
Okay.
So it, which is still a big thing in Japan. But we didn't have access to that here. So we got vendors who would just bring in shipments and shipments of this doujinshi. And
Wow.
there were a couple of memorable vendors who just like you would go walking through the dealer's hall and just hear this man screaming, "Get your red hot yaoi here." and they had like a rainbow flag behind their booth and like just yaoi in big letters, and like they were very excited about yaoi. And
we have the gay.
Yeah, and like the people would swarm the booths because they were very excited about it. And one of these vendors happened to get an excess of wooden paddles. Like they honestly look like boat paddles, like you paddle a canoe with.
Oh, okay.
And if you watch the video, you can find all the details on how they came into those, but they were like, we gotta sell these. And so they printed them, so on the like wide part of the paddle, it just in all caps would say yaoi or yuri or something of that nature. And it was not uncommon for people to run around wielding these wooden paddles at conventions. And some people would just like pose for silly like cosplay photos with them, but some people would actively assault, playfully assault, is not a great term, people with these paddles. And like that is definitely something I am glad we have curtailed and don't do at conventions anymore, because it's not cool. But yeah, that was kind of the paddle trend. But like there have been similar with like glomping that you talked about, where glomping was a trend where you would just surprise tackle hug someone, and that, as you know, hugs are not always wanted. So having someone surprise tackle hug you is not only physically dangerous, but also can be very unwanted.
Especially if you're in a cosplay and like,
oh my gosh,
'cause that's where a lot of the horror stories that I've heard is like,
I have some horror stories of getting surprise glomped in different costumes, because I am a very like tall, large person, so like smaller folks are like, oh, I can glomp and just like cling on like a alien face hugger to this person and it will be fine. It will be fun, in fact. Yes. Gosh, I will never forget when I was like cosplaying Hetalia back in the day, and I had someone who was a very big fan of the character I was playing, and they just screamed the name, ran across the like vendor hall, and just latched onto me like a koala. It was
Who
like,
were you? Were you
what?
Germany?
No, I was Russia.
Ah!
And it was a Belarus, I think.
Oh my
But
God. Okay.
but yeah, it was wow.
Yeah. Not cool.
No, it hurt quite a bit.
Yeah, definitely.
I had some that like got glomped out of nowhere. I think I was cosplaying like Sakura from Naruto, which I didn't even think was people's a particularly liked character at the time, but I got like tackled so hard I fell over, you know?
Oof.
And when you are a person with weak joints like me, that is a bad combo. So I I am glad that through these waves of like younger generations discovering new ways to interact at conventions, they have also had conventions act quickly to ban or curtail things that are harmful, right?
Yeah, like we've gotten cosplay is not consent as like a huge
Yes.
initiative on at like almost every con.
Yes.
Like it's
So I am very grateful for stuff like that. I don't think since probably like 2013, 2014 I've had another experience like that happen, which I am truly grateful for. I mean, it can also be like slightly more innocuous things. Like, I don't know if you remember like the 2010 World Cup where like vuvuzelas were huge.
Yeah.
The vuvuzela noise. People came to cons with vuvuzelas, and they would just like blast them throughout the hallways and the dealer room. And you know, it's just yes.
I'm exhausted just to like thinking about it, to be honest. Like it drains me so much to like just like, oh, I'm gonna go to a con, I'm gonna hang out with some of my friends.
Or there's probably like a 5-year time period where the game was very popular.
Oh, the game?
The game
You lost
that I
the
just
game
lost.
game?
Yes.
Yeah.
That game. And if you don't know what the game is, like, don't look it up. It's fine. You will lose it immediately.
We've lost the game. And they're like, yeah, like, wow, I haven't thought about the game in years.
I know, but like you would go to a convention and it would just be shouted up and down the hallways. I just lost the game.
Yeah. And you'd hear a bunch of people, oh no.
Yeah. So yeah, like and that one's pretty harmless compared to these other ones. I don't mind losing the game every so often.
Yeah, that's an easy like, yeah, that's annoying, but whatever.
Yeah. Or like I even think it's kind of cute when people will prance up and down hallways playing caramel dancing. I don't see that one as much, but you know, every now and then someone will walk by with a big Bluetooth speaker and just be blasting some kind of popular music for whatever the year it is, and people will be dancing along, following them in a big conga line down the hallways, and that's always fun.
Yeah, as long as you're not like actively interrupting somebody else's experience.
Exactly, yeah. And that's one of the things that I have very much liked about the growth of anime conventions is that there's a lot more awareness of how our actions affect other people and learning boundaries and being more respectful of other people's space and mental health, and so that's been great. You mentioned the cosplay is not consent. I think that's a huge one. I think that was a huge turning point, honestly, as far as like acceptable convention behavior, and in just making conventions safer in general. Like I am very glad for that whole movement and that it is still around and very prominent in most conventions, I think. That's been great.
Would you say that there was been a big change in the cosplay competition or masquerade side of things since like the 2005 to today?
Yeah, I think absolutely. Like, we've talked about it a little here and there in other episodes, but just the accessibility of resources online has absolutely changed the game for a lot of cosplayers.
Mm,
Um, like I was saying, back in the day, we had not a lot in the way of like references, but also not a lot in the way of like tutorials and learning how to do things.
hmm
And nowadays, you can follow like 10 different creators on your TikTok, and they're all going to show you like different ways to like create and craft and use different items and tools and sewing techniques and armor techniques. And it's almost overwhelming how much knowledge there is out there. And
hmm
I love that. But I also think it's changed. It's almost like set a different bar for cosplay at conventions. Like phew, I have a lot of feelings about this and I'm not sure how to put them in words, but like I love all cosplay, all levels of cosplay, wherever you're at. Like I don't think you should like feel like you have to achieve a certain level in order to be able to cosplay, right?
uh-huh.
Um and I think the accessibility of having costumes pre-made online has done a lot to spread like the love of characters and cosplay.
hmm
But it has also like, I mean, like anything is going to have like some downsides where people will um unfortunately like look down on other people who don't cosplay in the way that they think is correct, right?
Mm-hmm.
um so I feel like that was not something we saw as much in the early 2000s, where people would be like, just excited to see the character, whether or not the person even had a wig or contacts or makeup skills at all. You'd still be excited to see the characters cosplaying. And like, I just want people to know, like, no matter what level you're cosplaying at, no matter what your area of expertise is, like, I am always excited to see that, like, love and passion for the characters and for the shows that you like. So don't let anyone tell you otherwise as like a toxic mindset to get into. You don't have to cosplay any way but your own.
Yeah, don't listen to the toxic thoughts in your own head too.
Oh my
That's
gosh.
more of a
How
note for
dare
me.
you? How dare you?
I'm doing
Call me
NaNoWriMo
out like
right
this.
now. And I just finished like a chapter and I was like, I hate everything about this. Why am I even doing this? No one's even gonna read this. And I'm like, no, that's not the point of Nano. The point of Nano is just to get the words out.
Oh gosh. One of the other things that kind of like became more of a convention norm was having cosplay gatherings. Like I don't feel like that was necessarily a norm back in the day. Like you would run into someone in the hallway who might be from the same series as you or something and get excited and want to take pictures, but like you didn't necessarily have a designated area to cosplay from a series or a game or whatever. It was more like, oh, there's an event for this anime, they're going to announce new episodes or something, we should all cosplay to that. Kind of a thing, so that's been really cool to see, and I think has really helped build community. As far as like, is so much easier, I think, to have a social interaction without as much stress. Because while we don't glomp, which is not an okay social interaction, we do have the ability to go to a cosplay gathering and see, like, wow, there are all these potential friends who love the same thing I do, who are excited about the same thing I am. And it's so much easier to start a conversation going, you love this, I love this, let's talk about that,
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I really like. Sorry, I am umming a lot, and I don't usually do that.
I usually edit most of them out anyways, unless they like flow naturally.
Thank you, David. One of the other things I wanted to mention that are different now than they were later. That sentence makes sense. Some of the things I wanted to mention that were different then than they are now. You get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
is the vendor halls themselves. So like we talked about the rise of doujinshi, but like back in the day it was usually like the DVD publishers, studios, etc. Mostly that had booths there that would be like selling their line of DVDs or Blu-rays or CDs or whatever they were selling, like the official merch. And there was like such a heavy hand when it came to bootlegs, which I still am not like a huge fan of bootlegs, but like, you know, it some sneak by no matter what convention you go to, right?
Yeah.
But what I have loved to see has been such a rise in fan merchandise outside of just the media content. So it is especially apparent in artist alleys, where I think people have a lot of creativity to go like, hey, I like XYZ, but I want to like wear a hoodie that shows my love of XYZ. I want a million keychains of different artist interpretations of my favorite character.
Yeah.
You know, and I love Artist Alley. Artist Alley is probably one of my favorite things to do at a convention.
I don't have enough wall space. That's my biggest problem with Artist Alley is I don't have enough wall space.
So true. But like, yeah, it used to be like Artist Alleys would have like maybe prints, stickers, keychains if you were lucky. And now they have everything, you know? Yeah. You could find like hand towels, custom soaps. You could find like personalized dice. You can find literally just about anything that people will make fan merchandise out of. And it's so much fun. And it's so different from what I was used to seeing in the early days.
Yeah, definitely.
So I love that it has become much more like a celebration of pop culture and not necessarily just a
niche.
Yeah, well, even just a like corporate enterprise, I suppose, where you're like, let's make sure you buy like all of the DVDs and all of the CDs and XYZ. It's like, let's be creative as possible. Let's explode this into as many fun ways and creativity as possible, and I just really like that.
Yeah, I do think it's really funny. Like another thing that's like subtly changed that makes sense that it's changed to this point is in 2005, a lot of those fan artists and whatnot, they'd be able to say, "Hey, I've got this Madoka Magica thing with these specific characters," and now it's magical girl print with blue and red. Just to avoid like, you know, Funimation or whatever going after them because they wanted to sell their thing online. I think it makes sense that we have had to get to that place, but it's also like, hey, IPs, calm down. Like, it's it goes back to a lot of pirating is actually good for a video game and a TV show, because if it's a good quality of an item, most people will go, well, now I need to now I want this thing and I want to support it more so. So then they'll like actively invest money into the product. So, you know, IPs, calm down.
Right.
calm down, Funimation over there.
Yeah. So that's a very good one. And I feel like we could do a whole episode just on like the copyright laws surrounding things like Artist Alley. And even cosplay, I think we've talked a little bit about, because I've seen IPs go specifically after cosplayers for calling themselves the name of their IP character online. They're like, oh, you can't use that name because that, you know.
Do you remember a few years ago, somebody was like, received a cease and desist from Disney because they were stealing the likeness of Loki, and it was just I did my makeup, that's it. Like, And
Yeah.
they did. They looked really good, and they looked a lot like Tom Hiddleston in Loki. But like they're like, here's my face without the makeup. Here it is. I just have natural bone structure that makes me look this way. And sorry, Disney, but I can't stop my face.
Right. And yeah, like people need to calm down. And I don't know. I get frustrated to an extent, especially when it's like a big company like Disney. Like I can definitely understand wanting to cut back on it a little more when you're like a small independent creator. Like there are definitely specific artists or like webcomic artists or like small animation studios or even like D&D campaign or like podcasts
Yeah.
who have gone like, hey, can you maybe not sell fan merch because we don't necessarily appreciate that. And like I am far more apt to be respectful of like a indie creator than I would be a big company. But I still don't think it's necessarily harmful or taking money away from that creator unless that creator has that product already, you know?
Yeah,
'Cause
you make a cup that they sell as well. That's a
right.
little like,
Yeah.
crappy.
So I mean, is a very kind of nuanced situation, I suppose. But yeah, I think fandom does like so much good in forming communities, in promoting creativity, in like promoting small business, uh, things that I really like to support, which is why I that's my favorite place to spend money is on Artist Alley. So yeah.
Yeah. No, I love that. This has been very informative. Is there something that like you really miss besides viewing rooms?
Ah, that's a good question. Oh gosh.
Because like there's a part of me that wants to say like I really miss the energy. But that
Yeah.
was the energy of a 20-year-old, 20 years ago energy of me. So like I don't know, like if I saw that energy again, I'd probably go, "Oh no, Whew. I had a full night's sleep and I'm
Oh.
exhausted. Go away."
um gosh, I don't know, because like I feel like a lot of the events and things that I was excited to go to back in the day, like doing like karaoke nights or like pajama parties or like cosplay chess or cosplay contests, like all of those things are things that you still see today and still have people who are passionate about.
Mhm.
So I don't know that there's necessarily like things I miss. I feel like the base just continues to like grow and refine and become more, I don't know, socially aware
Mhm.
and safer the more we have them. Which I don't know. I think it's been a really like positive upward progress for the most part.
Yeah. I love that. I love to hear that you think that
Yeah.
it's like been a good growth, because it would be terrible to
Yeah.
be like, nah, burn it to the ground, start over, control alt delete, restart. We got to do something different.
Yeah. I
You know?
mean, I know people idealize like early convention days, but I think there have been so many things that just are like quality of life improvements
Yeah.
for both the attendees, for the staff, for like everyone involved, to make it just a safer, healthier, more fun place.
Yeah. Much more like personally manageable and like as far as your mental
Yeah.
health goes.
Yeah, like I don't know, like back in the day I would have never thought to have something like a quiet room, and now I'm just like I am so glad we have things like quiet rooms.
Yeah.
Or like I would have never thought that like was it like people walking around with the free hugs sign or advert, things like that don't seem necessarily like dangerous but are also like a little bit creepy.
Yeah.
Can like just having an awareness of like things like that, and like having more accessibility to like different art and just places where people can grow and socialize and do so in like, I think increasingly safe conditions. I mean, I'm sure there are always going to be things that can be improved, but
Oh yeah. Well, and
but
like as we grow and we develop, there's going to be something that you and I are going to look back on and go, oh, that we said that in 2023.
oh, I'm sure. I
Oh,
am sure I will
you
look
know.
back. I look back on like a year ago and I cringe at things I said. I am like looking back on just like what I said in this episode, and I'm already cringing on like talking about yaoi paddles and
Can I make a recommendation? Be the editor. It makes your cringe so
oh
much
my
better because then you can
gosh.
edit it out. You're like, nah, no, we're gonna take
Yeah.
that out.
Yeah. So yeah, that I am for one like glad that we are always like learning and growing and improving, and I would hope people would like call me to task if I was still the same person I was a year ago, 5 years ago, things like
Oh my
that, you know?
gosh. Yeah, definitely.
Because I want to get better. I want to improve. And like that's one of the reasons like for say like the cosplay contest that I help run. We always do like a post-mortem, a feedback panel,
Mhm.
because we legitimately take the concerns or suggestions that the people that come to our convention have, and we make changes to the rules, to the format every single year, and we grow. If we're not growing, we're stagnating.
Yeah.
So I have seen too many conventions just kind of stagnate because they aren't willing to change and update and take feedback into consideration.
Yeah.
Like feedback is not necessarily like an attack on you or the way like or your staff or the way the convention is run. It is to help us all get better.
Yeah, definitely. No, I love that. Thank you so much
Yeah.
for this little trip down history of cons in the past and how we've become so much better.
Oh, thank goodness. Yeah, now I'm trying to think back on things that I've missed, and I'm still like coming up like, no, we still have that. No, we still have that. You know, kind of a thing where I'm like, oh, no, we still have that, but more. We still have this, but more. So yeah.
I think the time that I was starting to join, like, there was definitely this, and I'm saying this with my hindsight. This is definitely like, it was kind of lecherous. A lot of like ooh, look at the sexy anime model that we're gonna put like out on display. That's like, not everyone needs to see that. Like, if that's your thing, that's your thing. I'm not here to shame. It's just, that's not a public thing. You know what I'm talking about? I think a lot of the cons that I was starting to attend to in like 2013, 2014, it kind of had that realm of just like, yes, we're going to be I'm trying to think of how to say this still in a family friendly oriented way. But we're basically going to make this as explicit as possible without getting banned or anything along those lines. And like there was this like okayness around being creepy around stuff like that, and I'm really glad that that's passed. Like again, I'm not trying to yuck anyone's yum. I'm just saying like there's a time and a place, and a public place where there could be children is definitely not it, my dude.
Yeah. And I think like a lot of cons have become either like more or less stringent on how they handle the dress code as far as things like that. But I think no matter the con, people are going to try to like push limits and things like that. But I think even in not that like you said, I don't want to yuck anybody's yum. I think conventions have actually, I've seen them make strides to like make a time and place for adult themed either like shows or cosplays or things like that, where people can do that and they can feel like their own kind of fun, like cosplaying whatever they want. So it just really depends.
Yeah, definitely.
But I think there's definitely been more of an awareness with like the crowds and what kind of environment you're in and things like that. So
definitely. Well, that was fantastic, and it sounds like there were some really great horror stories in there. But I'm gonna pull a horror story from our Discord server. So real quick,
horror stories. Spooky, spooky, spooky.
Love it.
There's Mercedes.
Yeah. Oh, Mercedes, you were here this entire time. I had
Yeah.
no idea. This one comes from Becky Boo Bear on our server. They shared a picture, and let me describe this to you, Pannon. It says water soluble interfacing mixed with Diet Coke creates interesting sticky globs. And
Oh no.
like, yeah, you can see that they've got the interfacing and it's kind of pinned together, and you just see this like Diet Coke stain across it a little bit, and like my heart breaks. They did later write, luckily, I think I can save it. The plan is to embroider each piece, then cut out around them and attach them to the final fabric neckline with fabric glue and seed beads around the border. The one is a bit darkened on the side, but not too noticeably.
Oh man. Oh, that's
Goodness. I like
Yeah.
it sounds like it overstimulate me like immediately. The sticky if it touched any of my skin, like nope, no thank you, I'm done.
Yeah, I mean it's hard because like water soluble interfacing is usually because you mean to soluble it later. So I'm like, oh well, you could wash it, and all the Coke and the like interfacing should wash away, but you may not necessarily want that.
Yeah,
So-
like if you're not done and you have to
If
throw
you're
it in the
not
wash
done,
now.
yeah, you don't want that to happen. So, well, dang.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for sharing that, Becky Boo Bear.
I thought of one last huge thing that I
yes.
appreciate at conventions these days, and that's the fact that like more people shower. Because like con funk was such a thing back in the day that like it had a word for it.
Yeah.
But like people are more aware of hygiene, and I appreciate that very much at convention.
Definitely. Oh my gosh.
Wow. So if you want to tell us, I mean, maybe there is something that is no longer at cons that you miss. So if we left anything out, like feel free to send us an email. You can do that at cosplaystitchandseam@gmail.com, or
you can send it to our website at cosplaystitchandseam.com or go to the Facebook page. Wow.
Changes the flow.
It really does. Mercedes, you got to come back. I got one good job and you're making me do more? What, you want me to do two things?
All in one breath.
Oh, okay, here we go. And go to the Facebook page. While you're on the Facebook page, tell our fantastic community what you are working on. Our fantastic community wants to see what you're doing and growing, and we want to see how you grew in the past few years. While you're on the internet, if you want to share the podcast with a friend, we would greatly appreciate that. That would greatly make sure that the algorithm likes us. I tried my best. I got that far.
Say, please breathe.
If you're on the internet and you want to help out the show, share the podcast with a friend, leave a review in whatever app that allows it to. And of course, if you have got a few dollars burning a hole in your pocket, you can go to our patreon.com/cosplaystitch. This is definitely the part where I do in one full breath. Some of the amazing people that we need to thank are Misty Lee, Jack S., Cynthia Eve Cosplay, Star Fetcher, Troft Cos, Lydia, Yggdrasil, Dr. Steggy, Cynics, Hot Riku, Rena Mira, Jazzy Kofed, Jaguar Quinn, Gloria Shu, Sudi, and Silver Deeds.
Nice. Thanks as always to Macee Roberts for the use of her music as our theme song, and to David Jeffress for Faye's amazing editing. How are your podcasts going, David?
They are going so stinking good. We talked about Hellboy, and I was really surprised because I asked Dane what he felt about Destiny, because that's a big theme in the Hellboy comics. And his reaction surprised me. Not what I was expecting, because we've talked about like living forever, and he's like, nah, no, not for me. But his take on Destiny was interesting. So go check out Comic Trades Monthly, and if you like a slow burn zombie audio drama, go check out The Last Voice. I literally have taken time off work just to get episodes out. So keep an eye on the feeds, you guys. They are coming. I'm taking time off work just to get the right tools and the right like experience and training, because I need new software for it. So it's coming. It's coming.
Yay!
I promise.
That is awesome. Okay, I have a really silly Yes, this week.
Okay.
Okay. So is a setup joke.
Okay. All right.
Okay. So this guy decides to get a tattoo on his cheek
Mhm.
of his favorite Star Wars character.
Okay.
You should have seen the Luke on his face. Nice.
That legit got me.
Oh, good. Okay. We'll see you next time, guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye.